Christian determined to go back. An evangelist embraced him, smiled, and wished him a blessed and successful journey, and so he hurried along, refusing to speak to anyone on the way, even if someone asked him a question. The entire time he walked like one treading on forbidden ground. He wouldn't believe he was safe until he was back on the way which he had left to follow Mr. Worldly Wiseman's counsel. So eventually Christian arrived at the gate. Now above the gate was written, "Knock, and the door will be opened to you." Therefore he knocked more than once or twice, saying, "May I now enter here? Will he within open to poor me, though I have been an undeserving rebel? Then will I not fail to sing his lasting praise on high." At last a solemn-looking person came to the gate, whose name was Goodwill. He asked Christian who he was, where he came from, and what he wanted. He who would enter must first stand without, knocking at the gate, but with no need to doubt. For he who is a knocker will surely enter in, for God will love him and forgive all his sin. Christian answered, "Here is a poor, burdened sinner. I come from the city of destruction, but am going to Mount Zion, so that I might be delivered from the wrath to come. Sir, since I have been informed that through this gate is the way there, I would like to know if you're willing to let me in." "I am willing with all my heart," Goodwill quickly responded. With that he opened the gate. When Christian was stepping in, the man gave him a pull. "Why did you do that?" asked Christian. The man replied, "Not far from this gate stands a strong castle, of which Beelzebub is the captain. From there both he and his allies shoot at those who approach this gate, thus hoping to kill them before they can enter." Then Christian said, "I rejoice and tremble." So when he was in, the man guarding the gate asked him who directed him there. "Evangelist encouraged me to come here and knock, and I did. He told me that you, sir, would tell me what I have to do." Goodwill said, "See, I have placed before you an open door that no one can shut." "Now I begin to reap the benefits of the risk I took," said Christian. "But why did you come by yourself?" said Goodwill. "Because none of my neighbors could see their danger as I had seen mine." "Did any of them know that you were coming here?" "Yes, my wife and children saw me first and called after me to turn back. Then some of my neighbors stood crying and calling after me to return, but I put my fingers in my ears so I could continue on my way." "But didn't any of them follow you and try to persuade you to turn back?" "Yes, both Obstinate and Pliable. However, when they saw that they could not succeed, Obstinate went away scoffing, but Pliable came with me a little way." "Why didn't he continue?" "We did come together until we came to the swamp of Despond, into which we accidentally fell. And then my neighbor Pliable became discouraged and refused to venture farther. He got out of the swamp on the side facing his own home, and told me I should go on alone and possess the blessed country for him. So he went his way, and I came mine. He followed Obstinate, and I came onto this gate." "Oh, the poor man!" exclaimed Goodwill. "Is the celestial glory of so little value to him that he didn't count it worth the risk of hazarding a few difficulties in order to obtain it?" "Honestly, I've told you the truth about Pliable, and if I should reveal all the truth about myself, it would appear that I'm no better. It's true he went back to his own house, but I also turned aside to go into the way of death, having been persuaded by the carnal argument of a Mr. Worldly Wiseman." Goodwill looked somewhat surprised. "Oh, did he happen to find you? How remarkable! He would have you searching for ease at the hands of Mr. Legality. Both of them are cheats. Did you take his advice?" "Yes, as far as I dared. I went to find Mr. Legality until it seemed to me that the mountain that stands by his house would fall on my head, and so I was forced to stop there." "That mountain has been the death of many and will be the death of many more," said Goodwill. "It's good that you escaped being dashed to pieces by it." "Well," said Christian, "I surely do not know what would have become of me if Evangelist had not come along. I was standing there depressed and confused, wondering what to do, but it was God's mercy that he came to me again. For if he hadn't come, I wouldn't have made it here. But here I am now, such as I am, indeed more worthy of death by that mountain than to be standing here talking with you, sir. Oh, what a blessing this is for me that I'm still allowed to enter here." Goodwill smiled and said, "We do not reject anyone from entering here, in spite of all they may have done before entering. The king says, 'Whoever comes to me, I will never drive away.' Therefore, good Christian, come with me a while, and I will show you the way you must go. Look ahead of you. Do you see this narrow way? It was constructed by the patriarchs and prophets and by Christ and his apostles, and it is as straight as a ruler can make it. This is the way you must go. But are there no bends or turns so a stranger might lose his way? Christian asked. Yes, there are many ways that connect to this, and they are crooked and wide. But you can distinguish the right from the wrong, since only the right way is straight and narrow. Then I saw in my dream that Christian asked Goodwill if he could help him get the burden off his back, for he still had not gotten rid of it and could not find any way to get it off without help. Goodwill told him, As for your burden, be content to bear it until you come to the place of deliverance. There it will fall from your back by itself. Then Christian tightened his belt and began to prepare for his journey. So Goodwill told him that after walking some distance from the gate, he would come to the house of the interpreter, at whose door he should knock. There he would be shown excellent things. Christian then said goodbye to his friend, and Goodwill wished him success on his journey. Christian traveled on until he came to the house of the interpreter, where he knocked repeatedly. At last someone came to the door and asked who was there. Sir, said Christian, I'm a traveler who was told by an acquaintance of the owner of this house that for my own benefit I should call here. Therefore I would like to speak to the master of the house. And so he called for the master of the house, who after a short time came to Christian and asked him what he wanted. Sir, I'm a man who's come from the city of destruction. I'm on my way to Mount Zion, and I was told by the man who stands at the gate where this way begins that if I called here, you would show me excellent things that would be of help to me on my journey. The man who was called interpreter said, Come in, and I will show you what will be profitable to you. So he had his servant turn on some lights and beckoned Christian to follow him. He led him into a private room and told his servant to open a door. And when he had done so, Christian could see hanging on the wall a picture of a very intense-looking man whose eyes were looking toward heaven. He had the best of books in his hand, the law of truth written on his lips, and the world behind his back. He stood there as if pleading with men, and a golden crown rested upon his head. What does this mean? Asked Christian. Interpreter explained, The man in this picture is 1 in 1,000. He can bring children into being, suffer birth pains with them, and nurse them himself after they are born. And since you see him with his eyes looking toward heaven, the best of books in his hand, and the law of truth written on his lips, you may be assured that his work is to know and reveal things hidden to sinners. That's why you see him standing there as if pleading with men, and you see that the world is cast behind him, and that a crown rests upon his head. That is to show you that by disregarding and despising the things of this present world, because of the love he has for his master's service, he will surely have glory for his reward in the world to come. Now, continued interpreter, I've shown you this picture first because the man in the picture has authority to be your guide in all the difficult places you may come to on your way. He alone has been authorized by the Lord to the place where you're going. Therefore, pay careful attention to what I've shown you, and always keep in mind what you have seen, for you may encounter someone on your journey who will pretend to lead you the right way, and in reality, however, his path will lead to death. Then Interpreter took him by the hand and led him into a very large room that, because it was never swept, was full of dust. Upon inspecting it for a while, Interpreter called his servant to sweep it, and when he began to sweep, such a cloud of dust arose that Christian almost choked. And then Interpreter told a young woman who stood watching, Bring some water in here and sprinkle the room. After she had done so, the room was easily swept and cleaned. What does this mean? Christian asked. This room is the heart of a man who was never sanctified by the sweet grace of the gospel, answered Interpreter. The dust is his original sin, and inward corruptions that have defiled his entire person. The one who first began to sweep is the law, but she who brought water and sprinkled it is the gospel. Now remember, you saw that no sooner had the first begun sweeping than the dust made such a cloud that the room could not be cleaned by him, and you were almost choked by it. This is to show you that the law, instead of cleansing the heart from sin, by its works revives and adds strength to sin. Even as that soul sees and tries to get rid of the sin, it's been granted no power to overthrow it. Again, you observe the young woman sprinkle the room with water so that it could easily be cleaned. This is to show you that when the gospel comes into the heart with all its sweet and precious influences, even as you saw the young woman still the dust by sprinkling the floor with water, sin is vanquished and subdued. The soul is cleansed through faith and is consequently fit for the King of glory to inhabit. I next saw in my dream that interpreter took him by the hand and led him into a small room where 2 children sat, each one in his own chair. The name of the older one was Passion, and the younger Patience. Passion seemed to be quite discontent, but Patience was very quiet. And then Christian asked, "Why is Passion so unhappy?" Interpreter answered, "Their guardian wants them to wait for the best things until the beginning of next year, but Passion wants everything now. Patience, however, is willing to wait." Then I saw someone come to Passion, offering him a bag of treasure and pouring it out at his feet. Passion quickly picked it up, rejoiced over it, and began to laugh scornfully at Patience. I noticed, however, that before long Passion had wasted all of his treasure and had only rags left for clothing. Christian turned again to interpreter. "Explain this matter to me more fully." "These 2 boys are symbols," answered interpreter. "Passion represents the people of this world, and Patience represents those of the world to come. As you can see, Passion wants his treasures now, this year, that is to say, in this world. This is how the men of this world are. They must have everything they want right now. They can't wait until next year, that is, until the next world, for their good inheritance. That proverb, a bird in the hand is worth 2 in the bush, carries more weight with them than all the divine promise of the blessings of the world to come. But as you observed, he quickly spent it all and was left with nothing but rags. And that is how it will be with all such people at the end of this world." Christian said, "I can see now that for many reasons Patience has the best wisdom. First, because he waits for the best things, and second, because he will have glory while the other has nothing but rags." "Not only this," said interpreter, "but you can add another. Know for certain that the glory of the next world will never wear out, but these present glories are suddenly gone. Therefore Passion did not have good reason to laugh at Patience simply because he had his treasures first. Patience will in the end laugh at Passion because he received his best things last. First must give way to last, because last is still yet to come, and last gives way to nothing, for there's nothing to follow. The one who receives his portion first, therefore, must of necessity spend it in its allotted time, but the one who has his portion last will have it lastingly. It said of a certain rich man, 'Son, remember that in your lifetime you received your good things, while Lazarus received bad things. But now he is comforted here, and you are in agony.'" "Then I can see," said Christian, "that it is best not to covet the things of this world, but to wait for things that are to come." Interpreter nodded. "You are speaking the truth, for the things that are seen are temporal, while the things that are not seen are eternal. But though this is true, since the present things and our own fleshly appetites are so compatible with each other, and since the things to come and our carnal senses are such strangers to each other, the first of these has easily become friends, while the latter are kept distant from one another." Then I saw in my dream that interpreter took Christian by the hand and led him into a place where fire was burning against a wall. One was standing beside it trying to put the fire out by constantly pouring great amounts of water upon it. And yet the fire continued to burn higher and hotter. "What does this mean?" asked Christian. Interpreter answered, "This fire is the work of grace that's formed in the heart. The one who throws water on it to extinguish it is the devil. But as you can see, the fire is burning higher and hotter in spite of this, and now you will see the reason why." And so he took Christian around to the backside of the wall, where they saw a man with a container of oil in his hand. Secretly, this man was continuously pouring oil into the fire. And then Christian asked, "What does this mean?" Interpreter answered, "This is the Christ, who with the oil of his grace continually maintains the work already begun in the heart. Because of this, in spite of what the devil can do, the souls of his people will continue to walk in his grace." The fact that the man was standing behind the wall to maintain the fire is meant to teach you that it is difficult for those experiencing temptation to see how this work of grace is being maintained in their souls. I also saw that once again Interpreter took him by the hand and led him into a pleasant place where a stately palace had been constructed. It was beautiful to behold, and when Christian saw it he was greatly delighted. He observed some people walking up on the top of the palace, and they were all clothed in gold. Then Christian asked, "May we go in there?" Interpreter took him and led him up toward the door of the palace. At the door stood a great number of people, all desiring to enter, but none daring to try. There was a man sitting at a table near the door with a book and pen, ready to take the name of anyone who would go in. Christian saw also that the many men in armor stood in the doorway to guard it, having resolved to inflict injury and mischief on those who would enter. Christian was amazed. At last every other man had drawn back in fear, and Christian saw a man with a resolute expression come up to the one seated at the table. He said, "Write down my name, sir," and it was done. And then Christian saw the man draw his sword and put a helmet on his head. The man rushed toward the door, and the armed men came upon him with deadly force. Not at all disheartened, he fought back, cutting and slashing with fierce determination. After a bloody confrontation with those who sought to keep him out, he fought his way through all them and pressed forward into the palace. Then there could be heard pleasant voices from within, even from the three that walked on top of the palace. They said, come in, eternal glory you shall win." And so the man went in and was clothed with garments like their own. Christian smiled and said, "I'm sure I understand the meaning of this. May I now go on from here?" "No, stay," said Interpreter, "until I have shown you a little more. After that you can be on your way." So Interpreter took him by the hand and led him into a very dark room, where a man sat in an iron cage. By all appearances the man was very sad. He sat with his eyes staring at the ground and with his hands folded, sighing as if his heart would break. Christian asked, "What does this mean?" Interpreter told him to talk with the man. And then Christian asked the man, "Who are you?" The man answered, "I am what I once was not." "What were you before?" "At one time I was a man who professed Christ, and whose faith was pure and growing. Not only in my own eyes, but also in the eyes of others. I was, so I thought, fit for the celestial city, and even felt joy when I thought of my arrival there." "Well, what are you now?" "I am now a man of despair, and I'm locked up in it as I am in this iron cage. I cannot get out. Oh, I cannot." "But how did you get into this condition?" "I ceased to watch and be sober. I allowed myself to be drawn by my lusts, and I sinned against the light of the Word and the goodness of God. I've grieved the Holy Spirit, and He has gone from me. I allowed an opening for the devil, and he has come to me. I have provoked God to anger, and He has left me. I have so hardened my heart that I cannot repent." Then Christian asked Interpreter, "But is there no hope for a man like this?" "Ask him," said Interpreter. Turning again to the man, Christian asked, "Must you be kept in the iron cage of despair? Is there no hope?" "No, none at all." "Why, the Son of the Blessed is very merciful. I have crucified Him to myself afresh. I have despised His very person. I've despised His righteousness. I've counted His blood as an unholy thing. I've shown utter contempt for the Spirit of grace. Therefore I've shut myself out from all the promises, and nothing remains for me but threatenings, dreadful threatenings, fearful threatenings of certain judgment and fiery wrath, which shall consume me as an adversary." Christian was greatly perplexed. "Why did you allow yourself to be brought into this condition?" "For the lusts and pleasures and profits of this world, in the enjoyment of which I promised myself great delight. But now every one of those things bites and gnaws at me like a fiery serpent." "But can you not now repent and turn around?" "God has denied me repentance. His word gives me no encouragement to believe. Yes, He has shut me up in this cage, and not all the men in the world can set me free. Oh, eternity! How will I ever bear the misery that I must face in eternity?" Then Interpreter looked at Christian and gave him this charge: "Remember this man's misery, and let it be a caution to you forever." "Well, this is frightening," Christian responded. "God help me to watch and be sober, to pray that I might shun what caused this man's misery. Sir, isn't it time for me to be on my way now?" "Not yet," said Interpreter. "Stay until I show you one more thing, and then you may leave." So he took Christian by the hand again, led him into a bedroom where someone was getting out of bed. As the man got dressed, he shook and trembled. Then Christian asked, "Why is this man trembling?" Interpreter then told the man to explain to Christian why he was trembling. And so he said, "Last night while I was sleeping, I dreamed, and suddenly the sky became completely black. The thunder roared and the lightning flashed in such a frightening way that I was filled with dread. Then I looked up and saw the clouds moving by an unusual speed. Next I heard a great trumpet blast and saw a man sitting upon a cloud, accompanied by the hosts of heaven. They were all arrayed in flames of fire, and the heavens were aflame as well. And I heard a voice saying, 'Arise, you dead, and come to judgment.' With that the rocks split, the graves opened, and the dead within them came forth. Some of them were very glad and looked to the heavens. Others tried to hide themselves under the mountains. Then I saw the man seated upon the cloud open the book, and he commanded the world to draw near. Yet because of a fierce flame that issued forth from before him, the dead were set at a distance from him, like the span between a judge and the prisoners that he will sentence. I heard it also proclaimed to those accompanying the man on the cloud, 'Gather together the tares, the chaff, the stubble, and cast them into the burning lake.' And with that a bottomless pit opened near where I stood. From the mouth of the pit spewed forth great amounts of smoke, coals of fire, and hideous noises. It was also commanded, 'Gather my wheat into the barn.' Then I saw many caught up and carried away in the clouds, but I was left behind. I looked for a place to hide myself, but I was unable to do so because the man who sat upon the cloud constantly kept his eye upon me. My sins also came to my mind, and my conscience accused me from every direction. After this, I awoke from my sleep." "But what was it that made you so afraid of this sight?" Christian asked. "Why, I thought that the day of judgment had come and that I was not ready for it. What frightened me most, however, was that the angels gathered some but left me behind. Also the pit of hell opened its mouth right at my feet, and my conscience continued to afflict me. It seemed that the judge always had his eye on me, his face full of indignation." Then Interpreter asked Christian, "Have you paid close attention to all these things?" "Yes, and they will fill me with both hope and fear." "Well, keep all these things in your mind, so that they may be a goad in your sides and prod you forward in the way you must go." And then Christian tightened his belt and began to make preparations for his journey. And so Interpreter blessed him, saying, "May the Comforter always be with you, dear Christian, to guide you in the way that leads to the city." And so Christian went on his way, saying, "Here I have seen things rare and profitable, things pleasant yet awesome to make me stable. What I have begun to take in hand, let me then think on and understand that I've been shown truth, so let me be thankful, O good Interpreter, to thee."